Welcome to the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce Education Committee Network's PAC 14 TV show, Education is Everybody's Business. My name is Ladd Colston. I am a business member with the Chamber and the CEO of Sustainable Visions, LLC. Today, we will examine the third in a series of informative PAC 14 TV shows looking at Eastern Shore concerns that matter. This third episode will feature the educational topic, Shore Concerns That Matter, Maryland's Blueprint, County Cost, and Taxpayer Commitment. Sponsored by the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, Chamber CEO Bill Chambers, and our Education Committee Network members want this TV show to be a source of community awareness and knowledge of topics that impact education and workforce development here on Maryland's Lower Eastern Shore. We appreciate you listening in and providing us with your feedback on its usefulness. So please subscribe if you're viewing this show on YouTube, and a thumbs up if you like it. So what is the blueprint for Maryland's future? Passed by the Maryland General Assembly in 2021, this state legislation is designed to transform public education across the state into a world-class education system by enriching student experiences, accelerating student outcomes, and improving the quality of education for all children, especially those who have been historically underserved. It's a 10-year plan that evolved out of the Kirwin Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education, commonly referred to as the Kirwin Commission. Kirwin is a reference to Dr. William E. Brit Kirwin, who will make a brief appearance for this show. This plan, the blueprint, consists of 5 distinct pillars that will prepare the workforce of tomorrow through college and career readiness and enhance our state's economic competitiveness. These 5 distinct pillars include, number 1, early childhood education; 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders; 3, college and career readiness; 4, more resources for all students to be successful; and 5, lastly, governance and accountability. Unfortunately, this blueprint legislation was enacted without a dedicated funding stream to pay for it. Although Maryland legislators have set aside enough money to cover the blueprint program costs through fiscal year 2027, it is currently projected to bring multi-billion-dollar operating budget deficits in the coming years. In this informative and insightful episode, we will examine how much the blueprint cost and who will fund it. And to start us off, I have invited Dr. John Andis, former superintendent of Worcester County Public Schools, a current member of the Worcester County Board of Education, and the author of a very timely book entitled Taking the Mystery Out of Funding Maryland Public Schools. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our viewers to Dr. John Andis, lecturer and professor of practice in the Seidel College of Education at Salisbury University. Welcome to our show.
Ladd, thank you very much. It's great to be with you today. I'm looking forward to this and opportunity to share some insights. about public school funding and the need for public school funding to make a difference for our students, for our current generation, and for future generations.
Wonderful. So please take us a few minutes, if you will, to share with our viewers why you wrote this wonderful book and what you were thinking at the time you wrote it.
Well, thank you, Lad. The purpose of the book is to share basic information about funding Maryland public schools. There is no other book like this available, so consequently there was a gap in the literature, and I felt it was important to fill that gap by providing some information, some basic information, by taking the mystery out of how Maryland public schools are funded. So the book contains an historical component, a contemporary component, and a discussion of the blueprint and the impact of the blueprint in Maryland public schools. So the purpose was to allow our general public, elected officials and others, to have a sense of funding Maryland public schools, where the money comes from, how the money is used, and what impact it makes for our students.
It's a very comprehensive book, I'm going to be honest with you. I had no idea. You historically, you took it all the way back to the colonial days.
Yes.
Okay, and the formation of the state of Maryland itself, and to bring it all the way up to current and into the future is just amazing. So, could you tell us how important it is that our lower Eastern Shore counties and taxpayers should acknowledge the overall purpose and, as I call it, the ROI, return on investment, for funding Maryland's blueprint for education?
I think it's important for us to understand the revenue streams that come into public schools. One revenue stream is from the federal government. One revenue stream is from the state, which is the blueprint. And the other revenue stream is from local county government. So we have three revenue streams that come into public schools. The dollars that come from the federal government are restricted. They can only be spent on what the federal government says you can spend them on. So as an example, under Every Student Succeeds Act, which identifies pots of money and how it can be spent. So as an example, under Every Student Succeeds Act, Title I funding. Mm-hmm. Title I funding can only be spent on Title I schools. So that's an example of restricted funds from the federal government. All funding from the federal government is restricted. School systems have absolutely no flexibility on how to spend that money, whether it's Title I schools or special education schools or food and nutrition supports from the United States Department of Agriculture. There's no flexibility. When in terms of the state funding is coming from the blueprint. Now within the blueprint, some of the money is targeted and restricted, and it can only be spent on what the blueprint says it can be spent on, and it is audited. The same thing with the federal government funds are audited. And other money is much more flexible that comes to our operating budget. So at the state funding, some of that money is funded through a per pupil allotment that is based on the total number of students, also based on the number of students who are eligible for free or reduced meals, are living with disabilities, have an IEP or special education, and are multilingual learners. So some of the money comes from a count of individuals, some of the money comes from foundation. And then that's a balance through equity. And that equitable lens is local wealth. So the more local wealth you have, the less state aid you get. So as an example, Worcester County is considered the wealthiest county in the state of Maryland under that state aid formula. So Worcester County receives the lowest amount of state aid. Whereas compared to Somerset or Wicomico, because of that state aid formula, they're viewed as some of the less wealthy counties in the state, so they receive more state funding. So in Worcester County, as an example in that state funding formula, Worcester receives about 20 to 25% from our state, and the rest of the money, about 75%, comes from county government.
Wow.
Whereas in Wicomico or Somerset or Caroline, the funding is just the opposite. The state's providing 70 to 75% of the funding, whereas the local county government is providing 20 to 25%. That's the wealth equalization formula. That's also explained in the book. Mm-hmm. And then the county funding is up to the county agency, whether it's a county council and county executive in Wicomico, or whether it's county commissioners in Somerset or county commissioners in in Worcester. So it's up to their funding. Now, county government has to give the same dollar amount they gave the prior year based on a per pupil basis. That's referred to as maintenance of effort, which I also describe in the book. So those three areas of funding, the federal dollars, you have the state dollars through the blueprint, and you have the local funding that comes together to form an operating budget. Boards of education in Maryland are fiscally dependent upon those three sources of funding. Boards of education can't tax, they can't borrow money, they can't bond, they can't do anything. So boards of education are fiscally reliable on those three sources of income. Now let's talk about the blueprint, because that's what you asked me about.
I sure did.
The blueprint is based on 5 pillars, which are also described in the book, or you can go to the Accountability Implementation Board website and review those 5 pillars. Of those 5 pillars, there's some of those pillars are directly geared towards developing the next generation of teachers, so it's the responsibility of universities in cooperation with local school systems. Some of those pillars are developing the next generation of learners through providing getting them career ready. So consequently, there are different pillars, and so school systems are responsible to make sure those pillars are implemented in their local school systems. Now, each of the pillars has different areas of responsibility. Each of those pillars has funding streams. So the funding streams that are making an impact, in my opinion, are the funding streams that are helping support early childhood education and helping local school systems expand early childhood education. Now, in my opinion, early childhood education is the most important place to put dollars.
Okay.
And that's where the blueprint is making an impact, because we all know that if we can assure that a young person, a child, is leaving 3rd grade at or above reading level and at or above math level, they will be very successful the rest of their lives. Now, I was a high school teacher, and I thought high school people were responsible for helping those young people be successful in life. But no, it's not true. Those first 5 years, the pre-K, K, grade 1, 2, and 3, those folks are responsible. And I bow down to the early childhood education teachers. They are absolutely phenomenal, incredible people who are making a difference. So return on investment in terms of dollars going into early childhood education, it's making a significant difference. Are we going to see a difference tomorrow? Probably not, because we're talking about, well, as an example, right now, when you think about it, the class of 2039 will be entering our school system, and the blueprint goes to 2032. So the class of 2039 will be entering our school systems in the fall. So this is a long-term investment in terms of return on investment. Now, immediately return on investment is a focus on career counseling that's going on in our public schools, and emphasis on career and technology education through the blueprint. And that's making a significant difference for our students in our schools by having career counseling and having individuals help our students navigate the job market and navigate possibilities and look at those possibilities. So the blueprint is providing additional money, resources to local public school systems so we can hire those career counselors and other individuals to help those students navigate what can be a very complex system and making decisions. So as an example, in 8th grade, students start to put together a 5-year plan, working with the guidance counselors and teachers and career counselors in their schools, and putting that together, that 5-year plan. In other words, what are you going to do in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and 13th grade, whatever that 13th grade happens to be. Now that 13th grade could be a tech school, it could be Warwick Community College, it could be Salisbury University, it could be the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, or it could be going right into the job market or going into the military. But that part of the blueprint is really providing support and assistance. The other aspect of the blueprint is there's some additional funding for community-based schools. So schools who are working in high poverty areas, community-based schools, is providing additional supports for those schools, which allows us to develop wraparound services. So we're working with the blueprint is encouraging, helping us to work with our partner agencies, like example, the Department of Social Services or the Health Department or our faith community, to provide wraparound services to families. Because in many cases, obviously the children and the students need help, but in some cases their families need help. We have many students who are in our school systems who are coming from single-parent homes, and we have a significant number of our students in our school systems who are being raised by their grandparents. Families need help.
Yes.
Families need support. Families are doing the very best possible they can do. They're sending the best kids they can to our schools, and we love them dearly. But sometimes they need help, and the best way to get that help and support is through wraparound services. So when we're talking about return on investment in terms of the blueprint, the emphasis on early childhood education is a return on investment that we may not see next 2 years or 3 years, but we will have an impact for the class of 2039 and beyond, or 2038, 2037, so forth, so on. The emphasis on career and technology education and identifying pathways to the future is a return on investment. Because I get so excited when, as an example, my house, if it's cold and I need somebody to come, and that individual shows up, that HVAC tech, and he graduated from Worcester Tech, I say, wow, that was a return on investment because he's here and now I'm going to get warm. Or in the summertime, I'm going to get chilled, whatever happens to be. Or I go to auto mechanic, and the auto mechanic is a graduate of Worcester Tech. Or I go out to eat at a restaurant, and that person's a graduate of Worcester Tech. Whatever happens to be, that's a return on investment. Or even greater return on investment is when that young person walks across the stage, gets their high school diploma, goes to UMES, or goes to Salisbury, or starts at Warwick, whatever happens to be, and comes back as a teacher. That's return on investment. So the blueprint is helping us move forward to get that return on investment. Will we see results right away? Not necessarily. We will see results with increased scores for our students in reading and mathematics, in third, fourth, and fifth grade, and so on. But eventually, it's going to impact those out years in terms of our graduates and what we're doing. So the blueprint is making a difference. We always could use some additional money because in Worcester County, it's wealth equalized many aspects of the blueprint, so we don't get enough state money to do what we need to do, and then we have to go ask our county commissioners for their help and support. And fortunately, over the years, our commissioners have been very helpful and very supportive of what we're trying to do. The blueprint is a mandate. We're held accountable for that. We have to file necessary reports. All the money that comes into a public school system, no matter where it happens to be, whether it's for federal dollars or from state dollars or from county dollars, it's all held accountable, and independent accounting firms are checking it all the time. So we have accountability built in. So I'm excited about the blueprint helping us to move forward to make a difference for our young people.
And that's the bottom line. We really appreciate this overview introduction. Hopefully our viewers will take all of this information into consideration. I'm a firm believer reading and math are two life skills. You have to have that in order to live life, and then to actually move into career planning. Middle school is just phenomenal. So thank you.
No, thank you, Lad. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Let me introduce our viewers to Dr. Brian J. Raygor, who is currently serving as the Assistant Superintendent, Chief Finance Operations Officer of the Wicomico County Public Schools.
Good afternoon, lad. It's good to be here.
Welcome to our show. Please help our viewers, if you will, to understand how schools receive their funding here in Wicomico County. And is there a difference between funding for construction or capital and funding for operations?
Certainly. So in Maryland, funding for school systems comes from two major sources, the state and then the local county. In Maryland, school systems don't have the ability to set a tax or collect taxes directly. So we're dependent on a state allocation and then a county allocation. And then that's going to really vary from county to county, and it's based on wealth. The higher the wealth of a county, the more that the school system in that county can depend on the county funds for their school funding. And with a lower wealth county like Wicomico, we're one of the lower wealth counties in the state, we depend much more on the state than on the county for our funding. And there is a significant difference between the operations and the capital funding. The operating budget is something we work on every year. You usually hear about it in budget time. And that's usually with us looking for the state allocation. That's very formulaic. It's based on the number of students that we have, and then the number of students in several populations, such as our multilingual learners, our special education students, our students from poverty. All those figures go into formula, and we get a state allocation. For the county, we work with the county executive and the county council and try to get an allocation that's going to help us meet our needs. The county funding is a little more flexible. Much of the state funding being formulaic, we have to devote portions of that funding to those sources that the state lays out. For example, again, the multilingual, special education, and so forth. County funding allows us to be a little more flexible. So there's things we hear about at budget time from the public, what they want to see in the schools. They want to see expanded opportunities for students and field trips and more AP classes and music and fine arts. We really rely on the county funding to provide those things to help us really make school a place students want to be and get those experiences that are really going to help them as they move out of high school and into the world of work and into higher education. Capital funding, similarly to operations, and it comes a mix from state and county, but it's separately held accounts, and that's for construction of new schools or major renovations or systemic renovations like HVAC or roofs. Of course, right now, most people know we're finishing up our most recent major project at Mardella Middle and High, looking forward to having that fully open for the start of the new school year. And at the same time, we're getting ready to begin construction on a replacement Fruitland Primary School. And it might seem like to folks that we're doing lots of construction, we're always building something. And we are. You figure with 24 schools, if we're doing a new project every 3 years, that's about 70 to 75 years till we come back to a school for a major project. So it is important that we get those capital dollars. And it really is a great partnership between the state and the county. The state has an agency called the Interagency Commission for School Funding, or the IAC, and they rate us on a number of factors and include poverty again in that, and they come up with a cost share formula. They provide more than half of the funds typically for a major construction project. And then we work with the county, and they've been generous. Last year, they granted $20.5 million for Fruitland Primary School to keep that on track so that we can break ground this spring. And we're working with them to finish up the funding of what that's going to look like in terms of the mix of the state and local funds.
Yeah, so us as homeowners and taxpayers, this is the kind of information we need to be aware of.
Yeah, so for a taxpayer, you pay your county tax bill on your property tax, and a portion of that gets allocated by the county executive and the county council in their annual budget, gets allocated down to the school system. It is different in other states where the school board actually sets a tax and you pay a specific school tax. In Maryland, we all roll that into that county tax base, and then we get our apportionment from the county.
So tell me, how has state funding changed for Wicomico County in specific now that we have the blueprint? And is this funding tied to blueprint implementation and accountability?
Yeah, it's a great question.
EIEB.
Yeah, the blueprint, of course, is a big buzzword in this state now.
Oh, yeah.
You hear about it with the state legislative session now and potential changes to the blueprint because it is an expensive plan. And it's an expensive plan because the whole idea behind the blueprint was to change the state's funding formula for schools and improve funding for schools to make Maryland schools not just the best in the country, but among the best in the world. And that does take funding, and they've put their money where their mouth is in terms of changing that formula. So we have seen some increase in state funds, but they are tied to the implementation, the accountability, and the plans that the EIEB sets forth, and that we're required to have 75% of the dollars really follow the students and document how the money that comes into us for special education and multilingual learners and all the other programs follow the students that comes into the county, and we have to document that those dollars are being used for those students for whom it's intended. So it's more bookkeeping on our end, but I think it's a positive thing to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the students and really meeting the the vision of the blueprint.
And I think our viewers need to understand too, as we look from county to county, there are rich counties such as Worcester County, okay, where most of the dollars are coming from the county. But also, if that be the case, the county has more control over where those dollars are going versus counties such as Somerset and Wicomico County, where most of the dollars are coming from the state.
Correct.
And as a result of that, the state has more say in terms of where those dollars are going to
Sure,
go.
we're required then with those state dollars, every county is required the state dollars to document that the dollars are following the student. But when a greater percentage of a Board of Education's budgets come from the state, that just means more of their budget is accountable to the state. Gives us a little bit less flexibility. Would like to say if you want more local control in the school system, it really takes more local dollars. And beyond that local control, again, to us, it's more about providing those extra opportunities for students, lowering class sizes, providing field trips, providing those special courses, the fine arts and music that everybody really wants for their students. And we really rely more on the local dollars for those sorts of things.
Yeah. And then, do you feel that most Wicomico County residents, taxpayers, and county council members value public school education as a budget priority and are willing to financially support the blueprint both now and in the future?
Yeah, I really think that our public supports the public schools. We saw that at the county executive's budget hearing last week, where a lot of people came out to speak in favor of funding the school system's budget request. But I understand it's tax dollars, and it is asking a lot of people to provide those funds. In terms of blueprint, those dollars are coming from the state, but that's our tax dollars as well. So we know people are concerned about that. So yeah, I think generally people are supportive, and I think people are willing to do what it takes to provide great schools for their students. But again, we're in Wicomico County. It's a low wealth county, and we don't have the local ability to raise the funds that some other counties do. So we have to be sensitive to that as well.
Yeah, it is an investment.
It is.
And hopefully our viewers, especially our residents and taxpayers, will understand that to invest in education is to get a return on investment. The payoff will come in time.
The payoff comes, and everybody wants what's best for their students.
Exactly. And for our county.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Viewers, we have the opportunity and privilege to virtually interview the architect of Maryland's blueprint, the Honorable Dr. William E. Kirwin. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Wonderful. So very briefly, are you happy to see that the blueprint has been officially implemented across the state of Maryland and in all 24 county public school systems?
Well, I am happy, lad, and I'm happy because what this can mean for our state. We're in an era where education is so important for the economy, for individual success. And with the blueprint, we have the promise of building the best education system in America and one of the best in the world. And if we can do that, it's going to position Maryland and its families and its citizens for success in the decades to come.
Well, tell me, what significant measurable outcomes would you like to see come out of its 10-year implementation?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think there's a belief across the state, a fallacious belief, that our education system was doing okay. Do you know that, and do your listeners know, that fewer than half of our high school graduates were completing school deemed college and career ready? And this is this is an issue that has to be addressed if we're going to be the state we want to be and have the opportunity for our citizens that we want them to have. So a primary goal of the blueprint is to get roughly 90% of high school graduates college and career ready when they leave high school. That will be a huge lift in the capacities of our graduating high school classes, and it will be a resource for them to succeed personally, but to build a strong economy in Maryland.
I agree totally. I tell everybody, I said, reading and math are critical career skills, but they're also critical life skills.
Absolutely. And let me tell you a real quick statistic. There's a national exam called the National Assessment of Education Progress that measures, we test in every state, fourth and eighth graders in reading and math. And here we are in Maryland, one of the wealthiest states in the nation. Some people say the wealthiest state on a per capita income. And in the in the 2021, I believe it was, assessment, Maryland ranked 43rd in the nation in fourth grade reading. We can't let that stand. And that's the kind of issue that we're trying to address with the blueprint. We want our kids to be reading as well as, to be in the top tier of states in the nation in their ability to read and do mathematics. That's what the blueprint is going to help us achieve.
Great, great. Well, tell me, what are the top 3 concerns as we move forward that you have with the implementation and accountability of the blueprint over the next, I think it's the next 6 years? 6 or 7 years, yes.
Right. Well, I would say the top 3, first of all, is will the state commit to the funding necessary to complete the implementation? We are currently funded fully at the state level through FY 28. But from FY 29 on, the blueprint will have to have additional funding. And will the state have the determination and commitment to provide those funds so we can fully implement the blueprint? So funding has to be a concern. Secondly, will we have the resolve and the determination to proceed on with the implementation? The blueprint calls for us to make a major reform in the way we do pre-K through 12 education in the state. And we need reform because we're not doing well right now. But when you have reform and change the way you've been doing things, people complain, oh, I don't want to do this different, and so you're going to hear lots of complaints coming from the jurisdiction because they don't want to make the changes necessary to make the blueprint successful. So we've got to, listen to those complaints, make adjustments where they're justified, but we've got to have the resolve to keep on keeping on. So that's my second concern. Will we as a state have the will and the persistence to continue with the full implementation? I would say the third concern is we've seen a huge exodus in teachers from our schools. COVID had all sorts of negative consequences, but one thing it did was teachers, decided to leave the profession. And so we have across the country, we have a huge deficit in our teaching workforce. We've got to rebuild that teaching workforce with highly qualified teachers. Now, in the blueprint, we have compensation levels and working conditions that will make Maryland a very attractive place for young people to go into teaching. But we've got to build up our teaching force with highly qualified teachers to fully get the benefit of the blueprint. So that's my third concern. Can we build the adequate numbers of teachers to make the blueprint the success it can be?
Thank you so much. I like that. Funding, resolve, and workforce development, especially with teachers. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and wish you the best always.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on your show. And if I can ever be helpful to you, come back and have another conversation. I'd be delighted to do so.
That we will do. Well, this brings us to a close for episode 3 of our Year 3 season, where we continue to explore and discuss sure concerns that matter. Please tune in as we present our 4th episode of Sure Concerns That Matter with the topic, Career Apprenticeship Success Stories. How do they really work? Until then, remember, education is everybody's business.